the silence before the storm. The Galactic Trade Summit had been a tradition for nearly 2 centuries. Every cycle, representatives from 47 different species gathered at Epsilon 9, a massive neutral station that floated in the void between star systems. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with sections designed to accommodate every kind of life form imaginable. Some areas had thick atmospheres for the methane breathers. Others were filled with water for the aquatic delegates. And in the central hub, where most business happened, the air was kept at a comfortable standard that most oxygen-breathing species could tolerate. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood near the observation deck, watching ships arrive from every corner of known space. He was a tall man with gray streaking through his dark hair, and he had represented humanity at these summits for nearly 15 years. Behind him, his assistant Jennifer Rost reviewed data on a holographic display. She was younger, sharp-minded, and had a gift for reading the political currents that flowed through these gatherings. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 50 years now. It had been a careful process, earning trust, building relationships, proving that Earth's people could be reliable partners in trade and diplomacy. Humans had colonies on 12 worlds now, peaceful settlements where families grew food, built homes, and contributed to the greater galactic economy. Marcus was proud of what humanity had achieved. They had come so far from being the newcomers that everyone watched with suspicion. The summit began as it always did, with speeches and formal greetings. The Council of Apex Species, the loose governing body that maintained order in this part of the galaxy, took their elevated positions. There were the Threne, insectoid beings with crystalline carapaces that refracted light in rainbow patterns. The Voltum, energy-based entities that communicated through modulated radiation. The Barak, heavily built reptilian creatures known for their incredible strength and equally incredible patience. And dozens of others, each playing their part in the complex dance of galactic politics. But there was tension in the air that Marcus could feel. The Krillian Dominion had been growing more aggressive in recent years. They were a relatively new power, having only achieved faster-than-light travel about 80 years ago. But they had expanded rapidly, taking control of resource-rich systems and establishing mining operations with little regard for existing claims. The Krillians were bipedal, with sleek bodies covered in dark blue scales and eyes that glowed with an inner yellow light. They moved with a predatory grace that made other species uncomfortable. Supreme Commander Vector led the Krillian delegation. He was tall even by his species standards, and he wore armor that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. When he spoke, his voice carried a resonance that made it sound like multiple beings talking at once. Marcus had dealt with Vector before and had never liked him. There was something cruel in the way the Krillian leader smiled, as if he knew a secret joke that everyone else would find horrifying. The first day of the summit passed without major incident. Trade agreements were discussed. Border disputes were mediated. Several smaller species presented grievances about unfair practices. It was all very routine, very civilized. Marcus even began to relax, thinking that perhaps this year would pass smoothly. That illusion shattered on the second day. The summit was in recess, with delegates mingling in the common areas, when every screen in the station suddenly activated. It was not a scheduled broadcast. The feeds cut through every channel, overriding security protocols with ease. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he recognized what was happening. Someone had taken control of the station's communication network. The image that appeared showed space from orbit. Marcus recognized the world immediately. Verdant Hope. It was one of humanity's agricultural colonies, a beautiful planet with vast grasslands and clean oceans. Over 9 million humans lived there, most of them families who had volunteered to help establish sustainable farming operations. Children attended schools there. Elderly couples had retired to enjoy the peaceful landscapes. It was about as far from a military target as a colony could be. Then Vector's face appeared on the screens. His yellow eyes seemed to stare directly at Marcus, and that cruel smile spread across his features. "People of the galaxy," Vector said, his voice smooth and confident. "For too long, the younger species have been allowed to expand without understanding their place in the natural order. Today, the Krillian Dominion provides a lesson in reality." The view shifted back to Verdant Hope. Marcus saw Krillian warships in orbit, dozens of them, their weapons arrays glowing with charging energy. He wanted to look away. He wanted to shut his eyes. But he could not move. None of the humans in the room could move. "This colony represents humanity's presumption," Vector continued. "They settle on worlds they have no right to claim. They spread like a plague across space that belongs to stronger, more worthy species. We offer them now a choice. Abandon your colonies. Return to your home system. Accept your limitations. Marcus finally found his voice. No, they cannot. This violates every treaty, every law. But his words were drowned out by what happened next. The Krillian ships opened fire. The bombardment was systematic and thorough. Orbital strikes hit population centers with terrifying precision. Marcus watched cities disappear in flashes of light. He watched farms burn. He watched the ocean itself seem to boil where the energy weapons struck. The broadcast showed it all in horrifying detail. People running through streets. Buildings collapsing. Parents trying to shield their children. It lasted for 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous bombardment. 6 hours that the Krillians made sure every species in the galaxy witnessed. They wanted everyone to see what happened to those who displeased them. They wanted fear to spread like a virus through every civilization. When it finally ended, verdant hope was silent. 9 million human souls were gone. The planet's surface was scarred and burning. Nothing moved except the smoke that rose from 1,000 impact sites. Vector appeared one last time. This is mercy, he said. This is restraint. Other human colonies have 72 hours to evacuate. If they do not, they will share this fate. Choose wisely. The screens went dark. For a long moment, the entire station was silent. Then chaos erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. Some species representatives demanded immediate action. Others argued for caution. The Council of Apex Species called for an emergency session. Marcus stood frozen, his mind unable to process what he had just witnessed. Jennifer was beside him, tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking. Around them, other human delegates and staff members looked like they had been physically struck. The emergency council session convened within the hour. Marcus sat in the human delegation area, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. One by one, species representatives stood to speak. Most condemned the attack. They called it barbaric, unnecessary, a violation of civilized conduct. But words were all they offered. Just words. The Threen ambassador proposed a formal censure of the Krillian Dominion. The Voltum suggested economic sanctions. The Barrack recommended opening negotiations. Every suggestion was carefully measured, designed not to escalate the situation, not to provoke the Krillians further. No one proposed military action. No one suggested forcing the Krillians to face consequences. No one offered humanity real justice. Marcus listened to it all with a growing numbness. These beings, these species that humanity had worked so hard to befriend and cooperate with, were going to do nothing. They would express sympathy. They would pass resolutions. They would form committees to investigate. But 9 million human lives were gone, and the galaxy's response was to write strongly worded letters. Finally Marcus stood. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to him. He looked around at the assembled delegates, at beings he had worked with for years, beings he had thought were allies. You condemn with words, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. 9 million of my people were murdered while you watched. Children burned alive for entertainment. And your response is sanctions and censure. The council president, an elderly Threen named Zixthor, spread his crystalline arms in a placating gesture. Ambassador Webb, we understand your pain. But we must respond carefully. The Krillian military is formidable. A war could cost billions of lives across dozens of worlds. So you choose to sacrifice humanity to avoid risk to yourselves? Marcus said flatly. We choose to preserve the peace, Zixthor replied. Marcus gathered his documents. He moved slowly, deliberately. Then he looked one last time at the council. There is no peace, he said. Not anymore. Humanity came to you in friendship. We followed your laws. We respected your traditions. We believed that civilization meant something here. He paused. We were wrong. Jennifer stood beside him. Around the chamber, every other human delegate rose as well. They moved as one toward the exits. Ambassador Webb, Zixthor called. What will Earth do? Marcus stopped at the doorway. He did not turn around. You wanted to see humanity accept its place, he said quietly. You wanted to see us know our limitations. Instead, you are about to learn something about my species. We remember. We do not forgive. And we do not forget those who watched our children die and did nothing. Then the humans left. Within 6 hours, every human ambassador in galactic space resigned. Every human diplomat departed from alien worlds. Human cargo ships turned away from trade stations. Human students left their universities. Human workers abandoned their posts. It happened with eerie coordination, as if Earth had been prepared for this possibility. as if humanity had always known that one day they might stand alone. The galaxy watched in confusion as millions of humans simply withdrew. They left behind empty embassies and closed offices. They took every piece of human technology with them. They wiped every database clean. Within 3 days, it was as if humanity had never been part of the galactic community at all. Earth's solar system went dark. Communication channels closed. Navigation beacons shut down. A wall of silence fell around humanity's home, and no one could see beyond it. The Krillian Dominion celebrated. Vector gave speeches about how fear had driven the weak humans away. He promised his people that the Krillian Empire would expand further, would take the colonies humanity abandoned, would show the galaxy what true strength looked like. But some species were not celebrating. Some of the older civilizations, the ones who had been in space for thousands of years, watched humanity's withdrawal with growing unease. They had seen species retreat before, had seen civilizations collapse under pressure. This was different. Humans were not running in panic. They were leaving with purpose. They were moving with military precision. They were preparing for something. On a sensor station near the edge of human space, a Voltum technician detected something unusual. Energy signatures that did not match any known technology. Massive power sources activating deep within Earth's solar system. Shipyards that had been dormant for decades suddenly coming online. The technician reported this to their superiors. The information eventually reached the Council of Apex Species. Zixthor reviewed the data with growing concern. "What are the humans building?" a junior council member asked. Zixthor's crystalline body dimmed, a sign of worry in his species. "I do not know," he said quietly. "But I fear we are about to discover what humanity kept hidden all these years." In the depths of space around Earth, in orbital shipyards and moon bases and hidden asteroid facilities, massive ships began to wake. They had been built decades ago, after humanity's first contact with aggressive aliens, before the current peace had been established. They represented humanity's answer to a single question: what if friendship failed? The ships were called Reapers, and they had been designed with one purpose: to make sure that if humanity ever faced extinction, they would not face it alone. Admiral Sarah Chin stood on the bridge of the ESS Nightfall, the lead Reaper-class vessel. She was a compact woman with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen combat in humanity's early border conflicts. She looked out at the growing fleet assembling around her ship. Dozens of Reapers. Hundreds of support vessels. Thousands of pilots and crew members, all volunteers, all ready. On her command console, a timer counted down. 72 hours. That was how long Vector had given humanity's other colonies to evacuate. That was how long humanity had given themselves to prepare. Chin pressed a button. Her face appeared on screens throughout the fleet. "For verdant hope," she said simply. 10,000 voices answered as one. "For verdant hope." The countdown continued. And in the darkness between stars, humanity prepared to remind the galaxy why fear was not just something you inflicted on others. Sometimes, fear was what you became. When humanity answered. 3 months had passed since the Verdant Hope massacre. 3 months since humanity withdrew from galactic civilization. 3 months of silence from Earth's solar system that grew more unsettling with each passing day. The galaxy had moved on, or at least pretended to. Trade continued. Diplomatic meetings happened. Life went on as it always did. The Krillian Dominion was thriving. With humanity gone, Vector had expanded aggressively into the power vacuum. His fleet seized 4 former human colonies and established military outposts on their surfaces. He took mining rights in 3 disputed systems, daring anyone to challenge him. No one did. The other species had learned their lesson. The Krillians were too dangerous to oppose. Vector held a grand celebration on Krillia Prime, the Dominion's capital world. He stood before thousands of his people, his armor gleaming under artificial lights, his yellow eyes bright with triumph. Behind him, holographic displays showed the expanded borders of Krillian territory. Ships flew overhead in formation, weapons charging and discharging in synchronized displays of power. "We have shown the galaxy the price of weakness," Vector announced, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the plaza. The humans fled like frightened children. Their colonies are ours now. Their resources fuel our expansion. This is only the beginning. The Krillian Dominion will reign supreme over this entire sector within 5 years. The crowd roared its approval. Vector smiled, that same cruel expression that had been on his face when he ordered the bombardment. He had won. He had faced no consequences. He had proven that might truly did make right in this galaxy. That night, as celebrations continued across Krillia Prime, the first reports came in. A Krillian patrol fleet in Sector 17 had missed its scheduled check-in. Nothing unusual initially. Communication errors happened. Equipment failed. The fleet commander had probably just forgotten to transmit on time. But when the backup patrol was sent to investigate, they found nothing. No debris. No distress signals. No evidence that 6 warships had ever been there at all. Vector dismissed it as an equipment malfunction. He ordered a full investigation but did not let it dampen his mood. The Krillian Empire was invincible. 2 days later it happened again. A mining operation in Sector 9 stopped transmitting. When ships arrived to check on them, the entire facility was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The asteroid where it had been built was still there, but every piece of Krillian equipment had been stripped away. The miners were missing. The structures had been dismantled with surgical precision. This time Vector paid attention. He called his military advisors together and demanded answers. None of them had any. There had been no battles. No one had detected any ships in those sectors. It was as if something invisible was plucking Krillian assets from space. The disappearances continued. Outposts went silent. Supply convoys vanished. Patrol groups stopped reporting. Each incident was clean, efficient, and completely unexplained. No witnesses survived. No evidence remained. Across Krillian territory, military commanders began to feel something they had not experienced in years. Fear. Vector refused to show weakness. He ordered increased patrols and demanded his fleets remain on high alert. He publicly blamed pirates and insurgents, claiming that jealous species were trying to undermine Krillian success through cowardly attacks. But privately he knew something else was happening. Something organized. Something methodical. On the bridge of the ESS Nightfall, Admiral Sarah Chin reviewed the latest operation reports with satisfaction. Her ship hung in the darkness of deep space, running on minimal power, invisible to conventional sensors. Around her, the rest of the Reaper fleet maintained the same silent vigil. Sector 12 operation completed successfully, her tactical officer reported. All Krillian personnel were captured and detained. The mining station has been dismantled. We left no trace. Chin nodded. She looked at the star map displayed before her, showing Krillian territory marked in blue. Red dots indicated targets already eliminated. Yellow dots showed upcoming objectives. There were so many yellow dots. Status on prisoner transfers? Chin asked. All captured Krillians have been moved to the holding facilities on Europa, another officer replied. They're being treated according to the Articles of War. Medical care, adequate food, no mistreatment. Good, Chin said. We are not them. We do this the right way. Her first officer, Commander James Park, approached. He was a younger man with sharp features and calculating eyes. Admiral, the Council wants to know if you're ready to proceed to Phase 2. Chin was quiet for a moment, looking at the stars beyond her viewport. 3 months of careful strikes had crippled Krillian expansion without a single human casualty. They had been ghosts, striking from nowhere, leaving no evidence, taking what they wanted and vanishing. It had been necessary to weaken the Dominion's military capability. But it was not enough. Yes, Chin finally said. Initiate Phase 2. It's time the galaxy knew what happened to Verdant Hope was not forgotten. Phase 2 began with a broadcast. Every communication system in galactic space suddenly activated simultaneously. Screens on trade stations, government buildings, private homes, and starships all displayed the same image. It was Admiral Sarah Chin, standing in her uniform, the symbol of Earth Defense Coalition clearly visible behind her. The galaxy, which had not heard from humanity in 3 months, suddenly went silent with shock. I am Admiral Sarah Chin of the Earth Defense Coalition, she began, her voice calm and measured. 3 months ago, the Krillian Dominion murdered 9 million human civilians in a terrorist attack broadcast across this galaxy. We watched as children burned. We watched as families died. We watched as an entire colony was erased from existence. She paused, letting her words sink in. We also watched as the galactic community did nothing. Oh, you condemned the attack. You passed resolutions. You expressed sympathy. But you did not act. You chose your own safety over justice. You chose to appease a tyrant rather than stand against evil. On Epsilon 9 station, Zixthor watched the broadcast with growing dread. Around him, other council members shifted uncomfortably. Chin continued. Humanity has therefore taken matters into our own hands. For 3 months, we have systematically dismantled Krillian military operations across 12 sectors. We have captured over 15,000 Krillian military personnel. We have eliminated 47 outposts, 18 fleet groups, and countless weapons facilities. All without a single civilian casualty. All without leaving evidence. All without mercy. The screen behind her changed, showing footage of Krillian ships being disabled by weapons fire that seemed to come from empty space. Footage of stations being methodically taken apart by invisible forces. Footage of Krillian commanders surrendering to soldiers in black armor that seemed to absorb light. The Krillian Dominion believed humanity was weak, Chin said. They believed we would run. They believed we would forget. They were wrong on all counts. We did not run. We prepared. We did not forget. We never will. Vector watched the broadcast from his command center, his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. The humans had done this. All of it. His missing fleets, his vanished outposts, his captured soldiers. It had all been humanity. This is impossible, he whispered. How? Chin answered his unspoken question as if she could hear him. You wonder how we accomplished this? The answer is simple. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first entered galactic space. We hoped we would never need these preparations. We hoped that civilization meant something, that laws would protect the innocent, that justice would prevail. We were wrong. So we built weapons. We developed tactics. We created a military doctrine specifically designed to fight enemies who vastly outnumber us. She leaned forward slightly, her expression hardening. We call it the long memory protocol. When you harm humanity, we do not respond with rage. We respond with calculation. We study you. We learn your weaknesses. We prepare our response with meticulous care. And then, when you have forgotten about us, when you think you are safe, we strike. Not once, but continuously, systematically, until the threat is eliminated. The screen showed more footage. Massive ships emerging from the darkness, their hulls covered in stealth coating that made them invisible to sensors. Weapon systems that fired projectiles at near light speed, hitting targets before anyone knew they were under attack. Soldiers equipped with powered armor that let them move like shadows through enemy facilities. Phase 1 of the long memory protocol is complete, Chin announced. The Krillian military has been reduced to 30% of its former strength. Phase 2 begins now. The broadcast cut to show a different view. Krillia Prime, the Dominion capital. And surrounding it, like predators circling wounded prey, were dozens of human warships. They had been there for hours, invisible, waiting. On Krillia Prime, alarms suddenly began screaming. Citizens looked up at the sky and saw nothing. But their defense systems were going crazy, showing massive objects in orbit that their eyes could not detect. Chen's voice continued. Supreme Commander Vector, you are hereby charged with crimes against sentient life. 9 million counts of murder. Genocide. Use of weapons of mass destruction against civilians. You will surrender yourself to human custody within 24 hours, or we will come and get you. And when we do, your entire military leadership will face the same charges. Vector stood frozen, staring at screens showing his own planet surrounded by an enemy he could not see. This is not revenge, Chin said, her voice taking on a colder edge. This is justice. Humanity does not wage war for conquest or glory. We wage it to ensure that those who target our people face consequences. We wage it to prove that civilian lives matter, that children matter, that there are some lines that should never be crossed. She paused one more time. To the rest of the galaxy, we do not threaten you. We have no desire for expansion or domination. But we will no longer rely on others to protect us. We will no longer trust that laws and treaties will keep us safe. From this day forward, humanity stands alone and armed. If you come in peace, we will be your friends. If you come in war, you will face what the Krillians are facing now. The broadcast ended with a final message displayed on every screen, 24 hours. The galaxy erupted into chaos. Some species panicked, fearing humanity would turn its weapons on them next. Others expressed cautious support, privately glad to see the Krillians finally face consequences. The Council of Apex Species called emergency session after emergency session, trying to figure out how to respond to this new reality. On Krillia Prime, Vector faced a choice. His military advisors urged him to fight. They had orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, millions of soldiers. Surely they could resist. But Vector had watched the footage. He had seen how completely humanity had dismantled his empire without anyone noticing. He had heard the cold certainty in Chen's voice. He knew that if he resisted, humanity would not just destroy him. They would destroy everything. 23 hours later, Vector walked out of his palace alone. He wore no armor, carried no weapons. He simply stood in the central plaza and waited. A human shuttle descended from the sky, landing with barely a sound. Soldiers in black armor emerged, their weapons ready but not raised. Admiral Chin herself walked down the ramp. She stopped in front of Vector. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The being who had ordered the death of 9 million and the being who had spent 3 months systematically destroying his empire in response. Supreme Commander Vector, Chin said formally. You are under arrest. Vector nodded slowly. I surrender. The soldiers placed restraints on him and led him to the shuttle. As they lifted off, Vector looked down at his capital city. His empire was finished. Not because humanity had destroyed it with overwhelming force, but because they had dismantled it piece by piece with terrifying efficiency. The trial was broadcast across the entire galaxy, just as the massacre had been. But this time, it was humanity controlling the cameras. Vector stood in a human courtroom, facing judges from Earth's highest courts. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Footage, communications records, testimony from his own officers who had been captured. He was found guilty on all counts. His sentence was life imprisonment in a human facility on Europa. He would spend the rest of his existence remembering what he had done, knowing that he had awakened something in humanity that could not be put back to sleep. The Krillian Dominion collapsed within weeks. Without Vector and his military leadership, the government fractured. The colonies they had conquered declared independence. The empire that had terrorized its neighbors for years simply ceased to exist. In the aftermath, humanity did something unexpected. They did not occupy Krillian worlds. They did not seize their resources. They simply withdrew back to their own space, taking their prisoners with them. But they also announced the formation of something new, the Coalition for Sentient Rights. Any species that wished to join could do so. The coalition had one simple purpose: to ensure that what happened to Verdant Hope never happened again to anyone. Surprisingly, dozens of species applied to join within the first month. Many of them were smaller civilizations that had felt vulnerable under the old system. They had watched humanity take down a major power and were impressed by both the military capability and the restraint shown. The Council of Apex Species found itself suddenly irrelevant. The new power structure in the galaxy had shifted, and humanity sat at its center not through conquest, but through proving they would actually enforce consequences for genocide. Admiral Chin gave one final broadcast 6 months after Vector's arrest. To the galaxy, she said, standing once again on the bridge of the Nightfall. Humanity did not want this role. We did not seek to become enforcers or judges. We simply wanted to live in peace, to build our colonies, to be part of this civilization. She looked directly into the camera. But we will not allow our people to be killed without response. We will not trust in laws that are not enforced. We will not forget those who watched our children die and did nothing. The long memory protocol remains active. It will remain active for as long as humanity exists. She paused, her expression softening slightly. But we also offer this. If you come to us seeking justice, we will help you find it. If you ask for protection, we will consider it. If you treat our people with respect, we will do the same for yours. Humanity can be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare. The choice, as always, is yours. The broadcast ended. In the years that followed, humanity became known throughout the galaxy by a new name. They were called the Silent Reapers, beings who did not threaten or boast, but who would systematically destroy anyone who targeted civilians. Their reputation grew with each passing year, and slowly attacks on defenseless populations across the galaxy decreased. Some species resented humanity's new role. Others were grateful for it. But all of them understood one fundamental truth that the Krillians had learned too late. Humanity remembered. Humanity did not forgive. And if you made them your enemy, they would find you. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but eventually. And when they did, no amount of power or technology would save you from their carefully planned, methodically executed justice. The memorial on Verdant Hope was built 5 years after the massacre. It stood in what had once been the colony's capital city, now rebuilt from the ashes. 9 million names were carved into black stone pillars arranged in a spiral pattern. Each name represented a life lost, a story ended, a future stolen. At the center stood a simple inscription: "They thought we would forget. They were wrong." And across the galaxy, billions of beings read those words and understood that humanity had changed forever. The species that had once sought only peace now carried both an olive branch and a sword. And they had proven they knew exactly when to use each one.